Hello, lovely souls, and welcome to One. Let's talk. Today, I want to talk to you about this idea of good versus bad, right versus wrong. How do you define what's good and what's bad? How do you know what's good and what's bad, right? I'm sure you've thought about this at least once in your life. This is crucial because you're going to make decisions off of it, right? So how can you determine what's good and what's bad? Do these things even exist? Do good and bad, right and wrong even exist? So morality is going to be the key focus of today's episode. And I promise you, if this is a subject that interests you, then I recommend that you stick around till the very end, because you're going to get some groundbreaking, insightful information out of it. I'm going to explain this my way. But first, hi, my name is Patil, and I want to help you take your power back by freeing your mind and healing your heart. All right. I really have to thank Nietzsche for this, because this quote of his that I'm about to share with you made me want to think about morality in a different light. It made me want to, ask myself some key fundamental questions about good and bad, right and wrong. This is what the quote says. Listen carefully. If you crush a cockroach, you're a hero. If you crush a butterfly, you're a villain. Morals have aesthetic criteria. I mean, wow, the way he worded this idea was genius in my opinion. And this made me want to ask a lot of questions. This is how it all started for me, and this was about 15 years ago at the very least. So I started to ask myself questions like these. Good and bad, right and wrong. Are these universal concepts? Can we say that we unanimously agree on the definitions of what good and bad are, of what they mean? Is there a single definition for these terms? Can we say that these are ultimate truths that are, set in stone and preserved over time? Or can we say that they're somewhat, subjective to the person, relative to the individual's experience? Another way to put it would be this. Is there a moral compass within us, this inner wisdom that knows what's good and what's bad? Can it be circumstantial? That in a specific instant, this thing or experience can be regarded as good, and in another instant, that could be seen as bad. Or are these values and ideas that we have learned from society? Maybe it's a little bit of both? ? So these were some very interesting questions that I started to think about at that time. And I would love to hear your thoughts on the matter if you want to share. But this is how it all started for me. A web of interconnected ideas and questions that were very interesting to entertain. But then I soon realized that I was going in circles. I did not reach a convincing conclusion for myself. And somewhere down the line, I came to the realization that I was not asking the right question. And I say right within quotations. So, what if there's a better way, a more constructive way of approaching this subject of good and bad? Instead of asking ourselves the question of, is this good or bad? Is this right or wrong? What if we shifted our focus to something else? To a different kind of question that holds the ultimate key to this enigma. And that's exactly what this episode is going to be about. So, once again, I am going to thank my spirit animal because I'm going to be using it for this talk. The serpent. And what a dual instrument the serpent is. What a powerful instrument. So, I invite you to go beyond labels with me for a minute and let's explore this from a different perspective. Let's look at it from a different angle. I do want to say that this is not a religious episode because I'm going to be using some examples from the Bible, okay? But it is not a religious episode. I know a lot of people can be a little bit sensitive to the idea of religion, and that's okay. But one is not a religious podcast. You can listen to my episode on the 3 powerful teachings of Jesus to get a feel of what I'm saying, to know what I mean when I say that this is not a religious podcast. You know, just the other day, this finally clicked for me that one is about holistic living. This channel is about holistic living, meaning living life in a way that helps us grow emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And that is by creating harmony between the masculine and the feminine energies, the heart and the mind, the soul and the spirit. I really struggled to brand myself in my business for a while, and then I surrendered. I just, set this intention, and I knew that the answer was going to come to me when I hold space, be open and receptive to the answer. So I just wanted to share that with you. It was a very, happy moment for me when everything fell into place. And I digress, I'm aware. But like I said, I will be giving examples from the Bible around the serpent and tie this to the idea of good and bad. And I know that many of you are familiar with these examples. These are excellent examples that I'm going to be using to make my point. Let's start with the book of Genesis. And we all know the story of Adam and Eve. And we know how the serpent presented itself to Adam and Eve as God's adversary. So in a way, in this story, it's very clear to us that the serpent was painted in a dark light, in an quote-unquote evil light. Yeah, you know how the story goes. So in that story, the serpent was very much associated with manipulation, temptation, deception, and deviousness. I mean, even the tree that God was referring to was called the tree of knowledge of good and evil. There you have it again, good and evil. I'm going to read to you a passage from the book of Genesis. Now, the phrasing may be different depending on the version of the Bible that you are using or the one that you find online, but the message is the same. I found this passage very interesting. And again, just to give you an idea of how the serpent was depicted in the book of Genesis. Listen to this. So the Lord God said to the serpent, "Because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and all wild animals. You will crawl on your belly and you will eat dust all the days of your life." You can see how the serpent in this passage is painted in a negative light, you could say. But then interestingly enough, in the book of Exodus, these 2 books are part of the Old Testament, something interesting happens. The serpent is associated with healing. It is depicted as a powerful instrument for healing and transformation. When we talk about the bronze serpent and how God instructed Moses to craft a bronze serpent, and everybody who looked at the serpent was healed. So to read you a passage from Exodus, and I found it again to be very interesting, this is what it said. "Then the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, so that many people of Israel died. And the people came to Moses and said, 'We have sinned because we have spoken against the Lord and against you. Intercede with the Lord, that he will remove the serpents from us.' And Moses interceded for the people. Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Make a fiery serpent and put it on a flagpole And it shall come about that everyone who is bitten and looks at it will live. That's exactly what happened. So the serpent in this passage now had healing qualities, was an instrument of healing. That's why I really love the serpent, because it is an excellent example of how to approach this concept of good and bad. So here comes the obvious question. How can this be? Which is it? How can it be that the same symbol represents good at times and evil, quote unquote, at other times? If you think about it, I mean, snakes are animals in general that can produce venom or they can produce medicine. So how do we solve this? Well, the snake is just one example. It's just one agent, one instrument, like many other things, like anything else, in fact, that can channel all kinds of energies. It can transmit helpful energies or harmful energies. It is simply an agent, an instrument. When you use something for beneficial purposes, for the purposes of light and love, then that links you to the serpent of light. When you use it for something that is harmful and detrimental to yourself and to other people, then that connects you to the serpent of darkness. See, I didn't say good and bad. I said light and darkness. I said harmful and helpful. Keep that in mind. What if things are inherently neutral? Yeah, they're tools that can either help or harm. They can either build or destroy. They can either hurt or heal based on how you use it. Let me give you some examples. I can use water, for instance, to quench somebody's thirst, or I can use water to drown a child. Yeah, it's a little bit dramatic, but you get the point. Another example would be this. I can use fire to keep myself warm, or to burn a building to the ground. I can use the internet to connect with people, just like I'm using YouTube right now to talk to you guys and to connect with you. Or I can use the internet to steal people's personal information without their consent. I can use words to comfort a crying child or to bully them into tears. I can use money to create a better life for myself and for my loved ones. Or I can use money to bribe, to cheat, and to deceive my way into more power. How you use something, how you use these tools, all of these are tools, by the way, is directly proportional to the quality of your life. It is one agent. It's the same agent. The snake, the internet, fire, water, money, words, one agent, one vessel, one tool, one instrument that can channel two completely different energies. Harmful, helpful. You know, going back to Nietzsche's quote about the cockroach and the butterfly, the hero and the villain, I want to give you a 3-step formula or approach, if you will, a way of thinking that you can use that will help you free yourself from this way of thinking, from this big, umbrella question of is this good or bad? Remember how I said let's approach this differently? Well, this is how I see it. Point number 1. As long as I'm not hurting anybody in any way, there is something extremely liberating in live and let live. The ego, I've talked about the ego in a previous episode. It's called The Ego is Not Bad. I recommend that you listen to that episode to get a clearer understanding if you're into the subject. And the ego houses identities, so it stores identities and it thrives on attachment. When you're attached to an identity, that's going to be somewhat problematic for you. I want to give you a personal example to tell you what I mean by that, and to tell you why it's incredibly freeing to do your own thing and to let others do their own thing. I'm someone who really values monogamy. I value monogamy a lot. I have never really understood polygamy, having multiple romantic and or sexual partners. I really did not understand that for a very long time. Being someone who deeply values that sacred bond that gets to be established between, let's say, a woman or someone who identifies as a woman and is predominantly in her feminine energy, and a man or someone who identifies as a man and is predominantly in his masculine energy. And, being committal and loyal to the sacred union that is both spiritual and physical in nature. I cannot negate the importance of physical attraction. So I just didn't understand how polygamy could fit into this equation. If you have multiple partners, then it's like a cocktail of energies and a soup of different, energies all mixing together. And I couldn't understand how that would even be possible. And not just that, I judged it. Because I really wanted to be right. In fact, I needed to be right more than wanted, because I was so attached to this identity of being a monogamous person that any other identity that was slightly different than the one that I had accepted, any other path or choice in relationships that was a tiny bit different than the one that, I had firmly held on to, threatened my identity. It threatened my ego, and I rejected it immediately as a defense mechanism. Everybody does this, by the way. So I'm still a monogamous person. It's a conscious choice. This choice harmonizes well with my beliefs, and that bit will never change for me. But what did change for me is the fact that now I am not threatened by any other form, romantic relationships take. Something that's different from what I value, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't threaten me anymore. You see, that's why it's very liberating to just think this way. It should not be a matter of my way or the highway. Especially when it comes to spirituality or spiritual topics, we see this a lot. Like I've, come to this truth. This is the ultimate truth, and you need to bend the knee, so to speak, and you need to conform to my ways of thinking. It's a much healthier approach to see it from the perspective that all roads lead to Rome. Rome being the truth with a capital T. And this applies to anything under the sun. I just shared a personal example with you about my views on relationships, but it applies to literally anything. Money, AI, Elon Musk, COVID, religion, you name it, anything. If you live and let live, that's a game changer. So to sum up the first point for you, instead of asking yourself this question, is this good or bad, and concerning yourself with that question, remind yourself that there's something incredibly liberating in live and let live. Acceptance, in other words. Judgment-free. This brings me to the second point. Human beings are beautiful in their complexity and diversity. Before I expand on that, let's try something together. I want to guide you through a small visualization, 2 to 3 minutes, and I want you to close your eyes, listen to the sound of my voice, and just imagine it. Imagine it with me as I'm saying the words. Let me illustrate this point for you in this way. So close your eyes, and in your mind's eye, I want you to see huge green meadows in front of you as far as the eye can see. Massive green spaces everywhere. Now, to your right, I want you to imagine a giant bag laying on the ground next to a tree. The details don't matter. I just want you to see the bag with your eyes closed. Now see lots and lots of people, like small tiny ants, standing in line. They're all coming towards the bag. They're moving towards the bag. And you're one of them. You're in line with them. The bag has seeds to offer, all kinds of seeds. In fact, every kind of possible seed you can imagine. And as each person gets to the bag, see them extending their hand and choosing a seed. Now the soil of that place is fertile. And you start seeing people planting their seeds anywhere they find convenient. Everybody is planting their seed. And so do you. This is a place where time does not exist. And what do you see? The minute you planted a seed, the minute everybody planted their seed, you see apples, oranges, pineapples, mangoes, tomatoes, cucumbers, all around. The meadows are filled with all kinds of plant life. Now open your eyes. I just walked you through the human experience in a nutshell. You see, just like these seeds were all very different and unique, they all had something very unique to offer. They were all given space to be fully expressed. Every human being is also very unique. And we all came here to express our potentials and to have divinity be expressed in us in this plane of duality. Don't concern yourself with what kinds of seeds other people were planting. If those seeds were not loving seeds, they were greedy in nature, let the laws of the universe take care of that. Not as punishment, by the way, just as lessons. Don't intervene. Don't interfere. It's really not your place. I would not take matters into my own hands if I were you, especially if my vibration says revenge. So don't concern yourself with what other people are planting. The kinds of seeds they're planting, how they're living their life. If they're lying and cheating and stealing their way into power and wealth and riches, or they're doing it with love. Let this not be your concern. I promise you, the laws of the universe are fair and they apply to every person. But your life would be much, much sweeter if you can make a habit out of celebrating the sameness you share with other people. The fact that every seed is divine, it has potential. And embracing the differences you have with them. The fact that every seed has something different to offer. Even if they're offering the same thing, it will not be the same energy. I promise you. So that's the second point. The second point, meaning that instead of saying to yourself, is this good or bad? Have empathy toward the differences you see around you, because that is very crucial for our collective evolution. We need to have this diversity so that we can continue evolving and learning. What would be the point if we're all the same? The reason why we chose to be here is because our differences are both essential for growth and expansion and also incredibly powerful triggering points for us. They trigger us so that we can learn, go inward, introspect, go back to the vibration of love. And this brings me to my third point. It's interesting to think about these questions of good and bad. It's wonderful. If you're in the process of, trying to find answers for yourself, by all means do. It's wonderful. God knows how many times I thought about this. I spent years trying to answer the question until I found that there's a better question that we can ask ourselves. You've been looking at this, we've been approaching this the wrong way. Instead of saying, is this good or bad? Is this right or wrong? Let the metric of any behavior, any decision that you're to make, any thought that you're to think, step that you're about to take, let the metric, the reference point of those things, those experiences be this. Is this coming from a place of love or fear? Instead of, is this right or wrong? Or is this good or bad? See, this question is a much more powerful question because when you are in the vibration of love, when you are acting from a place of love, you can do no wrong. You will always find the right answers for you. You will always find what's quote unquote good for you and for others, because love, that is a topic for another day. Love is something that is very difficult to put into words. It will always, always put you on the right path. Not just for you, that's the interesting bit, but for everybody else who's in contact with you. Physically, energetically, spiritually. And that will conclude today's episode. I really enjoyed talking about this, and thank you for listening and for holding space. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, my sweets, you are in it, but you've already won. Till next time.